Endless Legend, the first, released over 10 years ago. So, my friends, ditch your old publisher, it's time for Endless Legend 2. Let's take a look at this turn-based 4X fantasy strategy game and discover a little bit about what makes it tick, what makes it unique, and my early impressions. So, when you begin your game, just as a quick little note here at the start, you have plenty of time to explore. This prepared settlement bonus basically gives you bonus yields once you found a city, and the amount of time that those yields last for depends on how long you spent wandering around without a city. In this early preview build, we'll talk more about the state of the build later in the video. There are just 2 playable factions. I'm of course playing as one of those. And the early game feels quite familiar to Endless Legend 1. A quick note here, by the way, I won't assume that you've played a lot of Endless Legend 1. I'll assume that you know what a strategy game is, but outside of that, we'll be discovering Endless Legend 2 in many ways for the first time. The map itself, as you can tell, is very colourful, and it's based in territories just like the first game, or indeed Humankind, for this game of course is developed by Amplitude Studios, a development studio that is absolutely familiar to regular viewers of the channel. The world itself presents a very colourful view of a 4X strategy experience, and also one that is laced with story, as you might expect, because this is very much a kind of RPG strategy game. The world is initially filled with a whole load of minor factions that you can bribe, take over, ultimately befriend for extra sort of diplomatic benefits, as well as plenty of things to fight. And if you've played the first Endless Legend, or indeed Humankind game, then this kind of combat will be very familiar to you. Round-based, fought on the map, but within a sort of select territory. You can see the white borders around the combat zone. Here I'm opting to do it manually, but you absolutely don't have to. And in a welcome change of pace from certainly how Humankind launched, I can't actually speak to the launch of Endless Legend 1, because I don't think I was playing it at that point in time. But as a change of pace from both of those, this time around we have all of the kind of features you might expect. An instant resolve for that combat to get it completely out of the way, as well as an automatic fight that you could choose to watch. We'll return to combat in a little bit, but I want to lay the foundations, forgive the pun, for city building here as well. The first territory that you capture will be home to your capital, just as I've founded here. And as you can see, the wonderfully hexagonal tiles can be purchased using influence. Again, a very familiar yield, that purple star. Once you've purchased a territory, a tile I should say, in this game we call it laying a foundation, you'll then be able to build on top of those foundations, right? So purchase your foundation with influence, and then build a district. The other thing that it's probably important to cover off here in the introduction is that the technology tree works very similarly to Endless Legend 1, but not at all the same to perhaps more historical strategy games. You can see it's divided into 4 broad categories, very clearly laid out, and generally there aren't a lot of prerequisites per age of technology, though there are 6 different eras to work your way through. And of course each one will provide upgrades to these districts, right? New types of districts, or indeed ways to improve them, because there is a 3rd layer, as you can see down the bottom. Foundation, followed by district, followed by improvements to those districts. It's a very intuitive system, I've found, at least in this early impressions video, right? Quite easy to use. Let's change pace now and talk about heroes in an ever-changing world. First and foremost, here is the hero view. You'll start with 1, you'll be able to recruit more, and like in any good RPG come 4X strategy game, there's plenty of opportunity to upgrade them, both with attributes, overall attributes, as well as particular skills. You can see here both active and passive skills that will help you across the game. Likewise, many quests that you can pick up, a lot of them from maybe the minor factions, of which there are so many on the map. Speaking of the map, a couple of localization issues aside here, one of the big selling points, one of the big unique factors here, isn't just the storytelling behind these heroes and the many quests with them. I'd encourage you to pay particular attention to this homesick lord that I stumbled across here, because we'll see that lord later on. It's the world itself. I was going to say seasonality, but that doesn't quite do justice. What is one of the major mechanics of this game, it's called Tidefall, and it comes in stages. The first stage will be presented to you through this wonderful little cinematic. The game has many of these, they're generally fairly short. Sometimes they will include animations of your own city, which is really cool to see. Nice change of pace rather than just a generic animation. Back to the task at hand though, as you can see, a monsoon has come, and this presents all kinds of extra stuff. Extra benefit from fighting, but reduced vision. Health regeneration on units starting their turn in non-allied territory is also increased. This is both a dangerous period for the game, but also a period of great change. And it's reflected by a calendar, for lack of a better word, down the bottom right of the screen, as you can see in and around the turn timer, where there's of course loads of useful information, but crucially we can track the change of the season, the monsoon, and then the rapid tidal shift. And these shifts, in a way, act like eras, stages, ages for the game, but not in a really sort of harsh, rough, almost jerky way. It guides you through it. Let's take a look. Here you can see the world is visually different, right? Very stormy. It's monsoon season. And again, tracking it down the bottom here, I can see it'll last somewhere between 8 and 28 turns. And this is a mechanic that, if you've played games like this before, won't be all that unfamiliar to you, right? There's a certain element of the unknown. What happens once the monsoon is over, though, is really extreme. Tidefall, the water itself will disappear and the map will open up. And this is where it sort of reminds me a bit of like a changing of an age. This expansion of the map is very drastic, it would seem. And while it's not specifically related to those changes, the Tidefall changes, you will start to run into new mechanics. Here you can see that Lord that we bumped into earlier is now an Iron Magnate, giving me a minus 30% industry cost on districts. A handy little seat at the council, no. Back to the map though, starting to delve into some of the other mechanics here. Here you can see I'm shifting my population, the focus. Again, the different type of citizens in my empire will have an impact on how I can build these cities. You'll also notice I'm expanding out to new territories, new camps, as you can see here, that can be evolved from a coral spore into a camp. That's right, for the first step to settling a territory is to plant some coral there first. The coral will also improve yields in the area, so you can use it not only to lay the quote-unquote foundations for a new territory, but also to improve the overall yield. Diplomacy will also take a much greater role, and while it's early days yet, there do seem to be a lot of treaty options, though I found most of the time it was more important to focus on my districts, on building up as much influence as I possibly can. Again, we'll use that to build the foundations for districts, as well as fueling our expansion, either founding new territories, camps, or attaching them to existing cities. This system works very similarly to the old game, and very similarly to Humankind. What's completely different from Humankind is this. Here's that animation I briefly mentioned earlier. You can see my capital city directly involved. As the monsoons lift, the tides begin to recede as well. It's not just the storms that are moving away from this world, oh no, new land is revealed. And it's not just a little bit, as you can see. The world completely opens up as tidefall occurs. And as you'll also note, the timer down the bottom right has reset. It's time for a new season, if you will, to begin. This time around though, loads of turns in between, 69 through 89, before the next monsoon season will start to play out. A couple of quick notes on the build now. Man alive, I think I got access to it around a week ago, maybe 2 weeks actually, but I've had such a limited window of time between some real life stuff to check it out. Honestly, too much stuff, too many games going on, a list as long as my twiggy little arms. New Civ 7 DLC, Sins 2, Age of Wonders 4's new updates that have just dropped, so much stuff. But I decided to opt for something new in Endless Legend 2. And I don't regret it, though the build itself is fairly limited to the first 125 turns, 2 playable factions, and of course, it's a kind of a press preview, very early access state. Though, if I could call it a demo, let's say, as a demo, it's a really great demo. Some localization issues absolutely occur. I think they've acknowledged them, particularly, of course, in languages other than English, though even some of the English text is a little bit confused at times. Though, more broadly, I didn't find it to be an issue when it came to the gameplay, and the gameplay itself was almost flawless, except for one end turn bug where I couldn't end the turn. The game had simply frozen. Flashback to the launch of Humankind. Thankfully, autosaves every turn, and I was able to reload and get past it. With those notes on how the build plays put to one side, let's think about this a little more broadly now. My overall impressions, my early impressions from this early press preview look at Endless Legend 2. As I've mentioned a couple of times already, the world itself is very vibrant, very colourful. And within it, this system in particular, by the way, the foundations into districts, then into improvements, is a really satisfying system to use. Influence carries almost everything, though of course dust or money is also useful. The initial spreading of coral was done via that dust and money, and from there I used influence to build the foundations, and then the cities themselves, of course, construct the territories. Here you can see I'm wandering along, just placing down some coral. It'll take 3 turns to grow, and it will naturally spread, by the way, over time to adjacent tiles. Though I need to be careful, not just because this land is quite precious with a whole lot of interesting resources and intrigue across it, but also because the enemy will come. They will come and try and destroy the coral, by the way, from the very beginning, and then of course look to plunder your settlements. And it's probably a little early to pass judgment on exactly how that AI is playing, though in my relatively short run I found that it was fairly aggressive. I did have to be very careful about where I was positioning my units, moving my armies from one side of the map to the other, left open blind sites that were easy for the enemy to take advantage of. The units across the board seem really fun to use, and generally lean into the overall theme that the game is trying to go for in a very vibrant fantasy setting. I found that the diplomacy was maybe a little bit more complicated than I gave it credit for initially, and I probably need more time to actually figure out how it works. It seems very similar to the first Endless Legend game, but again, I think that it probably becomes more important the further through a game you play, and this build was fairly limited in the number of turns I could play. Though I found myself playing for a couple of hours, despite only being able to play 125-ish turns. Another key limitation here, of course, is victory. Not really able to play through a whole game means absolutely not able to achieve a proper victory, though, as you may have already seen from some of the gameplay, there are, I believe, 3 pathways. The first one is score, fairly self-explanatory. The second is conquest, again, pretty self-explanatory, right? Take out your enemies, take them out at their core. Finally, though, there is a narrative victory path, likely many paths within that, driven by story, of course the event, the world, the enemies, everything within it. I can't delve into the detail on how exactly that plays out, and whether it proves to be a really satisfying victory system, or one that is quite cumbersome, with lots of menial tasks burdening you down on your path to glory. That I do not yet know. So watch this space. And I think to conclude this video now, as we get to the final minute, Endless Legend 2 will indeed be a game of watch this space for me. Regular viewers of the channel will know that I put quite a bit of time, just a little bit of time, into Humankind when it released and in the years following. My early view of Endless Legend 2 is that it could also fill that void. Not that there isn't plenty of competition out there at the moment. Couple of other quick notes. The soundtrack is brilliant, almost brooding, moody, orchestral score that really suits the world and the game. And the graphics, I have them set to their highest level. Fantastic or fantastical or whatever it's called. And of course, I'm recording in glorious 4K for your eyeball viewing pleasure. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for watching. And if you're watching this video at the time of recording, a very happy and merry Easter to you if you celebrate. I'll see you wonderful people next time.